Two players with similar production, only one in the crosshairs. Let's talk about Josh Lowe and Christopher Morel.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Rays podcast. Locked On Rays is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and we are Kevin and Ulysses.
We are lifelong Rays fans who have been podcasting about the Tampa Bay Rays since 2019.
On today's Mailbag show, we look at some factors that have made for an up-and-down season for Shane Baz. In a few minutes, we'll break down how Edwin Uceta has seemingly turned his season around, but we'll begin with a 2025 season comparison between Josh Lowe and Chris Morel.
First, we've got to tell you that this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Yes, a lot of people are going to be saying Josh Lowe versus Christopher Morel. What are you guys even talking about? Well, we got the idea. So shout out from one of the Locked On Rays commenters and listeners, yes. Daryl Brooks, at Daryl Brooks 4412. He said this about 3 days ago. He said Josh Lowe has 50 at bats more than Morel, yet one less home run and 7 more RBIs. All Rays Nation is calling for Morel to be DFA'd and not a peep about Josh. Will Morel or Josh have more home runs this year? So first, Daryl, thank you so much for listening, for watching, for hitting that like button, and for commenting on the videos. Kevin, how does first let's start with this. How does this hit you? Did you have this before going in depth like we did with their numbers?
Right.
Did you think that this was the case, that Josh Lowe might have similar production to Christopher Morel?
A little bit. I mean, we've talked about it, dribs and drabs, of obviously Chris Morel not being productive as we'd expect, and same thing with Josh Lowe. I think what works out in Josh Lowe's favor in the fact that Chris Morel seemingly gets more hate than Josh Lowe is that Josh Lowe, at least in a Rays uniform, has exhibited his potential in what he can do back in 2023. And there might be a little bit of a reprieve with some of the injuries that he has dealt with. Whereas Chris Morel, oftentimes we think about, and you can look at this however you want, but we gave up Isaac Paredes, and in return, we got Chris Morel. Not necessarily saying that we traded Isaac Paredes to get Chris Morel, but that was a key part of the deal. Isaac Paredes goes, and partially in return, we got Chris Morel. So I think those are probably a couple of the main factors for why, Josh Lowe doesn't necessarily get as much distaste as Chris Morel does. And sometimes we're slaves to Baseball Reference WAR, and Josh Lowe has, not the greatest WAR. It is 0.6, but Chris Morel has a negative 0.6. So Josh Lowe, by my math, my college education math, he is 1 WAR better than Chris Morel. And I think there's some other factors in his gameplay that lends himself to being a more productive player. But ultimately, yes, we do and should hopefully see more from Josh Lowe. Maybe not necessarily in 2025, but 2026, that there's this belief that, he can become the 2023 man again.
I didn't think it was going to be this close, to be quite frank. I mean, if you look at WAR, fine, negative 0.6 to 0.6, but even guys like Bill James are saying that WAR has a margin of error of 1. Yeah. Sometimes. So by that, they're within margin of error to be equal players with WAR. And when you look at OPS plus, Josh Lowe's 88, Christopher Morel is not that far behind with 82. Right. And you look at batting average, Josh is better, 234 to 207. On base, Josh is better, 302 to 274. Slugging, Morel is better, 375, 387. So the OPSs are very similar still, 677 to 661. I didn't see that coming. I thought that although Josh was underperforming, he wouldn't be this close to Christopher Morel. And I understand that Josh spreads the ball around the field way more than Chris does, because Chris effectively doesn't.
No, and that's the other thing too. That's a factor, is the strikeout rate between Chris Morel and Josh Lowe. Josh Lowe has more plate appearance. I mean, well, I guess, looking at it, 50 plus more at bats and about 20 fewer strikeouts.
Yeah.
And it feels like Josh Lowe, just in some recent highlights of him, not necessarily saying that he's getting robbed, but he's making good line drive contact. It's going right to, the center fielder or the left fielder or the right fielder.
He is most definitely getting robbed in my viewpoint. He's sometimes hitting scorched line drives and they're getting caught. It does seem like in August, late July, he had been getting on a run, which made us believe that he's more like that guy that we saw in 2023. But really, to go to Daryl's question specifically, will Josh have more home runs this year than Chris?
Oof. That's tough.
That's tough. You know what? I'm gonna let you take dibs on that first.
You know what? I will say Chris Morel edges Josh Lowe in the home run category, but that does not mean that he is going to be a more valuable player to this team or this organization in 2025. Like, I could see Chris Morel having 11 or 12, and then Josh Lowe, having 9 or 10. Again, it just seems like Josh Lowe has been hitting more line drives than, sky high fly balls and whatnot. But I'd rather see what Josh Lowe is doing than what Chris Morel is doing. And to Josh Lowe's credit, like, he's legging out an infield single. He's laying down bunts. He's doing other things beyond just home run or strikeout. But Chris Morel, I mean, that's really what he sells out for is the home run. So by that, I think he'll lean into 1 or 2 or 3 more than Josh Lowe when it's all said and done.
Yeah, let's hope that they both can end the season on a high note. It might not mean much team-wise to the record, but for those guys to just know that they were able to kind of turn their season around, because it has been underperforming for both of them. But I did want to thank Daryl for that question, because I did not know that it was that close of similar production between the both of them.
Right. Absolutely. We appreciate the question. Keep them coming. You can email us, lockedonrays@gmail.com. You can comment on the YouTubes or send us voice memos or private messages on Twitter or Instagram. We appreciate all of that. Next, we'll call to the bullpen on a righty who has seemingly turned his season around. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, what'd you do? Did you wait? Nope. You called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so very important, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone, it is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. And the AI agent handles after-hours calls with Open Phone, answers common questions, and captures leads so you'll never miss a customer again. And right now, Open Phone is offering Locked On Rays listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonmlb. That's openphone.com/lockedonmlb. And if you have existing customers with another service, well, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Rays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For our second question of the day, we have Mike H, saying, Uceta has been unhittable. He is confident and smiling on the mound. Uceta is the best reliever the Rays have right now. He had inherited runners on first and second with no outs and struck out everyone, including Mike Trout. Obviously, speaking about that Angel series that started the West Coast trip. Kevin, can we talk about real quick how Edwin Uceta has completely turned his season around?
Yeah, and it's nice to see a reliever stepping up and making improvements. And the final line might not be that great when we look back on it, but at least we're seeing some strides being made. In his last 7 games, he has thrown 9 innings pitched, allowed 3 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 14 strikeouts, and a .44 whip. If we go all the way back to his last 15 games, he has thrown 19 1/3 innings, allowed 15 hits, 6 earned runs, 5 walks, 34 strikeouts, 103 whip. So we have seen in his last handful of games, he's definitely stepped it up. And like Mike H mentioned, he struck out Mike Trout, but he was also able to do solid things against Cal Riley and before that, Paul Goldschmidt. So he has been put in tough situations and gotten out some of the more intimidating hitters in baseball.
Parentheses, real quick. Apparently, we're saying Cal Riley wrong. It's not Raleigh. It's not Riley. Raleigh. Which one is it, guys? Apparently, it's a Raleigh.
So we are getting comments about how we mispronounce.
I think it's Mariners fans. I think it's like when Rays fans get like really personal about it's Brendan Lowe, not Lowe. I think it's
that. I don't know what to tell you. Okay, fine. We'll call him.
I thought Raleigh was like the North Carolina's capital, so I was like Raleigh.
Yeah,
but apparently it's
Raleigh. Raleigh. Okay, yeah. Well, we'll call him Cal or the Big Dumper, or the best catcher in baseball.
There we go. There you go, Mariners fans.
We got a couple of different options. Just like we've had trouble with a Rosarena, or I have had trouble with that. Just call him Randy.
Randy, there you go.
All right, so we have to take note of that for the upcoming series against the Mariners, and I guess a week or so, which I'm not too happy or confident about based on what happened over the last weekend. Again, treat Cal, treat the Big Dumper, treat the best hitting catcher in baseball like Barry Bonds.
Except
do not let him beat you.
Except if you're Edwin Uceta, because why has he been so successful? I'll tell you this. During his worst month in May, he was his pitch mix was 41% fastball, 38% changeup, 16% cutter, 6% on the sweeper. August, with his best month, you can see a dramatic change here, and I will let you guys know the four seam went from a 41% usage to a 52% usage. The changeup from 38 to 32%. So the changeup lowered while the fastball went up. The cutter also lowered from 16% to 10%. And now that sweeper at 6% goes down to 3%. And there's also apparently a new sinker, but there's not a lot of information on the sinker. So that makes me think that it could be just a mislabel on that sinker. But regardless, that change in pitch mix, what does that mean? I feel like the higher usage of the fastball is just helping that changeup be very effective, because that's his pitch. That changeup is nasty. It just does not get hit. And if you look at what the batting averages and slugging is against that changeup, it's just incredible. So I think he was getting a little bit too cutesy with trying to do the kitchen sink kind of repertoire of just having everything so you never know what's going on. And now in August, it's kind of like, no. Let's go back to what actually works. It's using that fastball to set up that changeup, and vice versa too, because they're both at a put away pitch. They're basically the same. The fastball has a put away percentage of 30%, and the changeup at 26%. So they're very similar to the fact that if he uses that changeup, it sets up the fastball. When he uses the fastball, it sets up the changeup. And I feel like this is one of the biggest positives that we can find in a year where the bullpen wasn't a strength. Edwin Uceta was able to just take his lumps, and finally turn it around. And we've seen a much better version closer to what he was in 2024 with Edwin Uceta.
Yeah, and if he keeps it up, that might open the playbook for the Rays in terms of, how are we going to figure out starting pitching in 2026? If you feel confident that Edwin Uceta can keep up what he's doing right now, you theoretically have Fairbanks and Uceta, and I guess when Hunter Biggie comes back and all the other cast of characters, maybe that allows for the Reds to say, okay, Griffin Jacks, let's convert you to a quasi starter, or let's find somebody in the bullpen that we can lengthen. And who knows? I mean, the fact that Edwin Uceta seems to have an ever-growing list of pitches, maybe he's a guy down the line. But I think what is really helping his case, you mentioned all the metrics and the usage, and I think it really simply comes down to a couple of things. One, when he's getting out some of these big boppers, he's getting ahead of the count. It's 0-2, 1-2, and he's throwing the four-seam fastball, top of the zone, edge to edge of the plate. And then when it comes time to throw a changeup, it's at the bottom of the zone. And there's not a huge difference in miles per hour. Like usually analysts will say, hey, you want 8 to 10 miles per hour difference. I think with Uceta, it's probably more like 5 to 6 to 7, if that. But if he's able to keep the arm speed and then change the eye level of those two respective pitches, he's got multiple out pitches when it's all said and done with that. So yeah, that's another silver lining we can take from the Rays so far this season.
Yeah, which is nice to get a silver lining, because maybe we're not going to get a silver lining too much in the starting rotation, as Shane Baz's 2025 season wasn't the next step that we were all hoping to see. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for the show. But guess what? Game Time will help you avoid all of the stress of ticket shopping. Why? Well, because prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals, people. 60%. Is that a lot, Kevin? I forget.
Yes, it's a lot.
It's a lot of money, people. So why do you not want to save 60%? Use Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and showtime tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Thank you for making the Locked On Rays podcast part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As we saw in Tuesday's game, Ulises, not necessarily the best showing for Shane Baz. And last I checked, his ERA is close. It is getting ever closer to that dreaded 5.00 plus mark, which is kind of crazy to think about, because we talked about how much we were dealing with Taj Bradley and his struggles and him ultimately being traded. Well, Shane Baz has a higher ERA than Taj Bradley. I know ERA isn't all everything, but it's still a factor in what he is dealing with and going through right now.
For a while, they were both struggling, right? And then when there was a little bit of a separation, like late June, early July, where Shane kind of had a little bit more stability, and Tosh did not find that. So it was an easy pick of like, hey, if we need to, if there's surplus, it would be Tosh, right? And it ended up being that way with the trade. But on Tuesday night's game, yes, I understand that the park is a factor. Yes, I understand that the Rays infield cost him a run.
That totally encapsulates the Rays season. That is like little leagueism right there.
If anybody would have been like, hey, can you just pick one play that shows why the Rays are in the situation that they are in, show them that play.
Yeah.
Show them that play.
Meanwhile,
catcher should be in the position where Nick Fortes was trying to make a catch there. That somebody needs to take charge, and it should be one, a shortstop who is basically the captain of the infield, or the third baseman, who is right there. So yeah, just disappointing there. But when I looked at our preseason picks, we both said very confidently Shane Baz. If we have to pick a pitcher of the Rays rotation that's going to go off, it's Shane Baz. That has not been the case. And you look up and down things that you like and that you don't like in the 24 starts. 7 quality starts out of those 24. 10 of those 24 starts, he's thrown more than 6 innings or 6 innings. He's had 5 shutout appearances. Very nice. He's had some high strikeouts games. I think 7 games with more than or equal to 7 Ks. So you see good things from what he can provide, but it's the instability, especially with the walks. 8 games with 3 or more walks. So the control there hasn't been a calling card for him in 2025. He has been durable, hasn't shown any type of injury or gone on the IL, but he's just been getting way more barreled than last year. And one thing I found kind of, puzzling was the extension. It went down from 6.7 in his rookie year to 6.4. And Kevin, I know you're 6'3", just like Shane Baz, so I'm not calling him short or you short, but
right.
Could that be affecting the pitch execution? The fact that his extension is not there, so hitters just get to see just a tiny bit more of spin, just a tiny bit of a microsecond that lets them think, hey, I'm not going to chase this pitch.
Yeah, I guess possibly. But even then, we've seen recently with Shane McClanahan, or not Shane McClanahan. Oh my gosh, I'm having brain farts here. Shane McClanahan hasn't pitched. Shane Baz has pitched this year for the Rays. He's dialing it up to 100 miles per hour. So I feel like extension shouldn't really even be that much of an issue. And, for what it's worth, he did have, he at least went the length on Tuesday against the Athletics, pitching 7 innings, 4 earned runs. And I think he had 7 strikeouts as well. The knuckle curve has really fooled hitters. So he has all the pieces and all the makings to be a frontline starter, but it's just not connecting for one reason or another. But I think the extension is just a small part of the issue. I mean, I don't think that's the all end. If that makes sense.
Look, yesterday, with the park being a factor, obviously look at him where he's also pitching his home games, right? Like, we have to take that into consideration. Yeah. Littell led basically the league in home runs allowed. Shane Baz is allowing many, many home runs as well. He's already passed the 20 home run allowed mark. So maybe it's a little bit of luck, because when you look at the BABIP, it jumped from 229 last year to 304. So it's a little bit elevated, and maybe he's getting unlucky, not only with the park factors, but just the way that baseball goes, because we were expecting that next step to be taken. I don't think we can say that next step has been taken, at least with results on the field. Maybe Ray's front office and the coaches and even Shane can say, no, I actually did take that next step. When you look at my expected stats, for example, because when they all look better than his actual stats. His ERA at 4.93, when you look at his expected ERA, is at 3.3. So that's a big change. That's a big swing. Right. And when you look at his FIP at 4.32, his expected FIP is at 3.83. So maybe there is a little bit of bad luck that is murking these numbers, and you could potentially argue that next step has been taken. But from our views, from our lens, I think that results-wise, that next step has not been taken by Shane Baz, the one we were expecting.
No. Yeah, and again, not being slaves to the WAR necessarily, he is at a 0.1 WAR, which I don't know if that's fair or unfair. At least he's given us 135 innings, some unproductive, some productive, but I would think at some point, maybe not in 2025, but 2026, there will be some regression or progression to the mean, whereby you mentioned the expected stats. It'll fall more in line where his ERA in 2026 might be under 4 or closer to what he's done previously with the Rays. I just think he has too much talent and too much ability to not be a very, very productive pitcher. And I think that the offseason will be a great opportunity. Spring training will be a great opportunity for Kyle Snyder and the front office team to really hone in on what has been giving Shane Baz issues and figure out and really come up with a game plan, whether it is eliminating a pitch or using a certain pitch or pitches more and trying to get him on the right path for next season and beyond. And, it also doesn't help matters when the offense that's supposed to be helping you out goose eggs against the Athletics. You lost 6-0. I mean, so there was no
to a pitcher that you had in your own farm system. You should have the most information about him, and they weren't able to crack him open. In Jacob Lopez 2 times.
Yeah. Yeah, I every time I see Jacob Lopez, I recoil a little bit. Every time I see Joe Ryan, I recoil a little bit. And again, I think that there also could be a thing where you're down by a couple runs, the offense isn't helping you out, so you try to be a little bit more of a try hard with going outside of your realm to try to get extra strikeouts or not put the ball in play, whatever it may be. But it's a tough situation, and it brings up larger questions for 2026, like who are going to be our go-to guys in the rotation. That's something we'll have to talk with Evan Klosky about. But yeah, just I don't know what else to say outside of it's been a really crummy season to this point if you're a Rays fan.
Yeah, and again, the hope for us, particularly during the preseason, was can the 3 studs just step up to the plate here with Pepio, with Bradley, and Baz. We got to look into Pepio. I think I got an argument there for Ryan, but yeah, with Shane, it's the production on the field hasn't lent you to think that he's taken that next step.
Yeah. All right. We will talk to you all later. We appreciate you listening to the Locked On Rays podcast. Be sure to check out the Locked On MLB Game Night show. Every game, every night, all season long. Local analysis brought to you on a national scale. You can find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on the YouTubes or wherever you listen to your podcasts.